Azerbaijan and Armenia are accusing each other of breaking a ceasefire to suspend the fighting that's already killed hundreds over the last month. Both countries are fighting over the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. The territory is internationally recognized as part of Azerbaijan, but has a high ethnic Armenian population. The latest fighting, which started in late September, is the most serious escalation of violence in the region in decades. Other international powers, including the U.S., are calling for peace. Anton Troianovski is a Moscow correspondent for the New York Times, and he's with us now to talk more about the latest in the conflict. Anton, give us some background information on what is happening in the region.
So this used to be part of the Soviet Union. It's the South Caucasus we're talking about, between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, kind of at the border line between Europe and Asia. There's a region there called Nagorno-Karabakh, ethnic Armenian region within Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan and Armenia fought a long war over who controls that region that lasted all the way until 1994. As a result of that war, 20,000 people died, and about 1 million people were expelled from their homes, mostly Azerbaijanis who had to leave that area that is now controlled by Armenia. And so then we had 26 years of sometimes violent tensions between Armenia and Azerbaijan over the future of Nagorno-Karabakh. And that all exploded at the end of September in this new war.
So then what happened at the end of September that triggered this new round of fighting?
Well, we don't exactly know, but the way we understand it is Azerbaijan launched an offensive to try to capture Nagorno-Karabakh and the regions around Nagorno-Karabakh, which are also occupied by ethnic Armenian forces, in a military effort. They say that was in response to some kind of provocation from the Armenian side. We don't know the exact details, but the bottom line is right now Azerbaijan is fighting a war to try to conquer that territory that is under international law, part of Azerbaijan, but de facto controlled by Armenia. They're trying to conquer that territory, and as you said, many hundreds of people have already died.
So you visited the Nagorno-Karabakh region, and you spoke to people living there about how the fighting is impacting them. What'd you learn?
It was really, really dramatic. I mean, this is a real war we're talking about, and it's different from the war that happened in the 1990s over Nagorno-Karabakh, because the weapons being used now are far more powerful and deadly than what was being used back then. Back then, people were fighting basically with rifles for the most part, with small arms. Now, there's heavy artillery exchanges from both sides. And Azerbaijan, which has a lot of money now because of an oil boom in the country, is using high-tech drones that advise from Israel and from Turkey. And so as a result, you just have this fear pervasive in Nagorno-Karabakh. In peacetime, it's home to about 150,000 people. Around half the people are believed to have left their homes, but there's still a lot of people there, civilians who are hiding in their basements, who have spent 3 weeks essentially living in their basements because they never know when the shelling might start again. They never know when a drone might start circling overhead and launching a missile. It's a really, really tense situation there.
Yeah, you paint a really vivid picture of these, ghost towns, ghost villages, if you will, whole families that either left on their own or were forced to leave with whatever they could carry. We now know that our Armenian and Azerbaijani officials are set to meet with U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on Friday. What role has the U.S. historically played in this conflict, and what do we expect the role to be now?
Well, historically, the United States, along with Russia and France, has been one of the world powers trying to mediate that dispute. Lately, the U.S. has not been particularly involved. Russia has tried to mediate. Actually, the foreign ministers of Azerbaijan and Armenia are in Moscow today, holding talks separately with the Russian foreign minister, and I believe they're going to fly from here to Washington separately, obviously. But the U.S. historically has played a role. It hasn't played much of a role in this conflict, but we should note that this looks to be an incredibly difficult diplomatic challenge. So Russia brokered a ceasefire more than a week ago. It hasn't held. France brokered a ceasefire this past weekend. It also hasn't held. So Secretary Pompeo has a huge challenge ahead of him if he's going to try to find a peaceful resolution here.
So you mentioned the United States. How about regional powers like Russia and Turkey? What is their role?
Yeah, the other thing about this conflict is that, right now the fighting is officially between Armenia and Azerbaijan, but it could really draw in other powers. So Turkey is Azerbaijan's main ally, and they have supported, Turkey has supported Azerbaijan very strongly rhetorically in the fighting. There's a possibility certainly that Turkey enters the fighting more assertively on the military front as well. On the other side, you have Armenia, which has a mutual defense alliance with Russia, which means that if Armenia were to be attacked within the actual territory of Armenia, Russia would be treaty bound to enter the conflict and defend Armenia. So right now, the conflict is mainly happening in that disputed territory of Nagorno-Karabakh, which under international law is part of Azerbaijan. But if the conflict were to spread beyond Nagorno-Karabakh into Armenia proper, then you could really see Russia play a bigger role. Kind of the nightmare scenario that a lot of people see here is something that brings Russia and Turkey into direct conflict.
Anton Troianovski, thank you so much. Despite the best efforts of technology, we managed to get the story out. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.